Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another reloading chat. So I'm going to resize a little brass, and let's talk about the Dakota pipeline protesters. I haven't really delved into this topic because I would think it would be obvious where I would stand on this. I want to talk about technology and innovation, but yeah, I guess we need to jump into this a little bit. I just read an article in Forbes which stated that it's been estimated that the protesters have left 250 large truckloads worth of trash. That's how much they're going to have to cart out. 250 truckloads of trash. Now, these are people who were there talking about cleaning up the environment. Supposed environmentalists concerned with the pipelines are going to cause damage to the environment. Yet they themselves, with their silly-ass protest, have left 250 truckloads of garbage. 250 truckloads of garbage. And even the Native Americans there had complained about the protesters who were there. They were causing problems for them, blocking sometimes their ability to get to their own property, blocking roads. And they said basically they turned it into a big Burning Man festival. All right, that's what they did. They turned it into a Burning Man festival, and they trashed the entire area. And even the natives there were pissed about it. And it goes to show you this crazy leftist protesters and these people who get into these causes. It goes to show you how entitled and completely out of touch they are with reality. All right, they're completely out of touch. I mean, the fact that they're going to go protest something and instead turn it into a big festival, I guess, where everyone just gets all high and parties and everything, instead of doing something productive, and then they end up trashing the entire area while believing deep down that they've done something for an environmental cause. The sheer insanity of it. I mean, this is the sort of protest we're seeing from this generation of leftists in general. It's kind of like when Black Lives Matter movement want to protest when a black thug of some type gets shot, actually oftentimes for justified reasons. What do to protest? They go burn down their own neighborhoods. They end up burning down black-owned businesses and causing all sorts of harm and everything else, while believing that they're actually doing something positive towards their cause. Right? That's what we see with all these social justice warrior types. Their protests do nothing but make them look like idiots, and they end up just causing more damage and harm even towards their own cause, because if you're going to save the environment, you don't leave 250 gallons of trash all across the wilderness. So, I'm sorry, 250 truckloads of trash. But they didn't think about that. They only thought about, well, I'm going to go support this cause. And you know what? They didn't even research the cause. They don't even understand this cause that they're talking about. First of all, this was about money. If you look into it further, the Native Americans didn't originally protest. They were protesting because they felt they got underpaid. They wanted more money for the pipeline to come through there. And where the pipeline was going to go by the time these protests started was no longer on the current Sioux reservation lands. It was on lands that had previously been set aside by the government for the Dakota Sioux that were no longer considered reservation lands. Why? Because frankly put, most Native Americans these days choose to not live on reservations. All right, those reservations are people who want to continue to be their tribe. They want to continue to try to practice something related to their original lifestyle, even though they know that will never be the same because we're in a modern world. And these were hunter-gatherers for the most part. That's no longer compatible with the modern world. They all use normal technology and foods and everything else. A lot of them still hunt and things, but it's not the same. But they choose to stay there. But the thing is, many leave, most leave when they reach adulthood. You don't see these tribes having the same number of people living on the reservations that they used to. Just large numbers of them choose to leave. So over time, their populations dwindle as they choose to integrate into mainstream society. And that's something people need to remember. The fact that reservations exist is actually the compromise to give the Native Americans the choice to continue to try to be part of their original people, but they always have the option to come integrate into mainstream society. It gives them an option, something most people don't have. So people can talk all they want about how wrong we've done the Native Americans, but we've made up for it, way made up for it, because they have something that other people in this country do not have. They have the option to choose that lifestyle or integrate into mainstream society. You as a citizen of any country generally don't have the option to just go off the system. You don't have the option to just go live somewhere on a reservation or the wilderness and be off the grid completely. You still are going to have a lot of legal obligations. You're still going to have certain things you have to do within society. You're still going to pay taxes. A lot of things that you're going to have to do. You don't really have the same option. They have more options than other people do. And that's the whole point. But the thing is, many of them make the choice to leave. And so what ends up happening, these tribes on the reservations with each generation get a little bit smaller. All right, they don't grow, they don't get bigger, and it's not because they're being starved out or anything. They're taken care of. It's that they choose to leave that lifestyle and just become normal people in the normal mainstream society and leave behind their traditional way of life. And again, that's the option the majority make over time. So they get smaller. So these lands get pushed back because they tend to want to stay near each other. They don't want to be spread out across the entire reservation without having any neighbors. Most of them don't. They don't want to be 10 miles away or 50 miles away from the rest of the tribe. They choose to live nearby. So over time, these reservations get smaller, and then they get retaken as federal land. When there's a region that no one has lived on for a generation, that area of land gets kind of reclaimed back off the reservation for basically become like national parks and national property and stuff like that. So that's basically what happens. And the area the pipeline was going to go through at that point no longer went through the actual lands of the Dakota Sioux. And again, they wanted more money. That was the big deal. But the thing is, people need to understand, and we talk about this, this is again an entitled, ignorant generation who doesn't understand the way the world works. You know, these people want to complain about the potential risks of oil, but how many of them are running around driving a Tesla? Right, a hybrid doesn't count, guys. If you're not driving a fully electric car and you still choose to use public transportation that uses gas, you use a public bus ever, you use a jet, anything but your electric car, you are requiring oil for your lifestyle choice. Now, some people say, well, I can't afford an electric car. Well, that's for privileged people. Well, no, if it was important to you, you would find a way to afford it. You would go get a second job. You would find a way to get a better job that pays more. You would find a way. You would make sacrifices to do that. And people will say, well, I had too many. Well, you chose to have too many kids instead of affording a Tesla. You know, the same people who go and have 4 or 5 kids don't get to complain about the environment either, because you're the biggest strain on the environment. Let's be honest here. Anyone who has more than 1 or 2 kids, any family, is putting a strain on the environment for resources because they've made a choice. They wanted more children, and that's fine. But when you do that, you don't get to complain about the environment. You know, you kind of opted out for that. You can, but it's really hypocritical because you chose things that you desired more, in that case, having a big family. You chose that instead of being, you know, environmentally conscious because now you've got a bigger family, uses more resources, and you know you can't afford that electric car. So all these people are out here who are doing this, who themselves oftentimes, many of them don't contribute to society meaningfully, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to take the time to go be on a protest for 2 weeks straight. So you're dealing with very entitled people who don't even understand how any of this works, and people don't seem to grasp oil is necessary right now. We do not have the technology and infrastructure to get away from fossil fuels. Now, I'll be the first to say we do need to get away from fossil fuels eventually. In fact, we definitely need to, as quickly as possible, remove our dependence upon Middle Eastern oil. All right, that's the best thing we could do right now. But we will have to get away from fossil fuels, and I think most sane people realize that. Eventually, we're going to have to. Whether you believe in climate change or not is largely irrelevant. That's irrelevant. It still puts nasty soot in the air. All right, it still creates breathing problems, excessive amounts of, you live in big cities and everything, sinuses and everything else. It is nasty, it is dirty, it does pollute the air around you. No one wants to breathe excessive amounts of car exhaust. I mean, let's just be honest. We're going to have to develop something better eventually. The problem is we're not there yet. Oil is a necessary evil for our society. It is a necessary evil for our society, and the only way you're going to say, well, no, we could trim back society, but the same people who want to talk about the environment, the leftists, aren't willing to trim out the fluff in society either. They want to continue to have welfare and everything. I would argue to them, if they really cared about the environment, they'd go ahead and call out people who are on welfare. See what I mean? Now, that's not the most moral choice, but they're not really being as strict about the environment as they think they are. Or about our use of resources. And in the meantime, with what our populations are and the amount of movement we need to do to make things work, oil is a necessary evil. It is an absolutely necessary evil. And pipelines are the cleanest method of transport. All right, you can argue all you want about spillage and drip off and everything else. It is a proven fact of anyone who's studied midstream technology that pipelines are, by an enormous, absolutely enormous margin, the cleanest, most environmentally friendly way to transport oil. All right? The most. And that point's not even arguable. Like everything else is so much worse of spillage per barrel that you're going to get, that if you really cared about the environment, it would pipelines, you would support it, because oil is a necessary evil and it is the lowest spillage form of transportation we currently have the technology to utilize. So anyone worried about pipelines who's talking about the environment, you know, you're really being hypocritical, or you're being really ignorant. Maybe a little bit of both. So this being against pipelines is not an environmental issue unless you have a solution right now, a better technological solution that we could implement next week across the nation. You're ignorant for even protesting pipelines. You're profoundly ignorant because you haven't offered a viable alternative. You haven't offered a viable alternative to oil that we could implement that would actually be feasible. You haven't offered a cleaner way to transport oil, because pipelines are the cleanest. That is the most efficient and cleanest form of midstream technology that uses the lowest resources, has the lowest waste. It is hands down the best. It's the best that we have technologically. And if you don't have an alternative, then you should probably shut your damn mouth. That's all I'm saying. Unless you have a viable alternative, then what in the hell are you protesting? It's just called being a self-entitled little pussy who wants to have something to protest about without actually understanding what it is. The same sort of people who would protest that and still talk about it are the same sort of people who dump 250 truckloads of trash all over the wilderness in the name of the environment. Damn hippies. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.